So Paul, the other day, I was in an interview and somebody asked me an interesting question that I've never been asked before. They said, can you think of an instance where you tried to be convincing or tried to convince someone of something, and you were unsuccessful? And at the time, it kind of caught me a little flat-footed. I went home and I shared that with my wife, and she laughed and said, you're unsuccessful convincing people of that every day. And I think she was trying to be snide about it, but it made me think that really we are in the business of coming up with new ideas, some of them great, some of them not so great, and showing them to people and getting their honest feedback. And every once in a while, the answer to what do you think of this is, that's fantastic, when can I have it? But most of the time, that's not the answer we get. And I think we've gotten pretty thick skins about hearing the word no. I think we've talked about this before, but I almost wonder if we haven't learned to appreciate it in ways that we never would have before. And I'd love to chat about that a little bit. I'm struck always by some of the experience that I've had with some of our clients. One of them is Procter & Gamble, who probably does the most user research of any organization I've ever seen before. Probably thousands and thousands of user interviews every year. And they taught me a term that they've learned as they start to understand where there's really a no hidden behind a yes. And that is what they hear. If anyone tells them that, oh, that would be good for camping, that's code for them that is a non-starter. That means that's a product that someone's going to use maybe once a year in a really specific circumstance.
Right. It's a red alert.
Yeah, that's not enough for Procter & Gamble to invest in that. So clearly, hearing the word no is a part of their process. I wonder whether that spurs any ideas for you of times in your experience where you've heard the word no, and that was just a means to an end. Just part of the process for getting to what the right answer might actually be.
Yeah, the challenge, of course, with the word no, I find when we're doing a lot of this research is it's very clandestine. People don't just come out and say no. And in fact, often no is not necessarily an outright no. It's just more of a, you're going down the wrong direction and you need to sort of course correct a little bit, right? One that I think of a couple examples, but there's an example of some time ago interviewing a surgeon about this device to be used in surgery, and it was supposed to be this nice big cart, and we thought, oh, we're going to make all the controls sterile so that the surgeons can interact with it and can see all kinds of cool things that are going on with the samples that are going to put into it. And as the surgeon was sort of hearing us explain our case for the workflow and how this device is going to work, and he thought, yeah, that's not really how I would use that thing. It's, I don't like the idea of just adding disruptive things that are just going to slow down my procedure and make it longer. And it's always a balance of making sure they understand the value proposition, but also making sure that we hear that feedback from them and then accordingly place that into our systems. And he would say, instead of trying to make the thing sterile, I was like, just never mind that. I'm not going to touch it. It's like, I don't want to touch it. I'm busy doing my thing. And in reality, I just need like probably one image out of this thing. And I'm not going to be sitting there like flipping through a bunch of different images. So we sort of took that back and said, great, we don't actually have to make it sterile friendly, which is a complete nightmare if anybody knows when you're dealing with touch controls on reusable devices. So that often, you kind of, it crushes your soul a little maybe at the time when you're like, oh,
but there's a little silver lining.
I wanted to go with it, but then you immediately sort of think back and you sort of stand up again and you think, okay, I'm going to take this information, I'm going to sort of revert this, and then we're going to turn it into the product that it needs to be, right? Hence why we do this research, because it's impossible for us to be experts at all these different facets. So.
I love that. I think a lot of people think that if somebody says no, that the answer is going to be to add more complexity, or what about this and something else? It's not only an additive process. Sometimes it's subtractive. Sometimes making it simpler and doing less is actually the real.
Yeah. Oh, I love when it simplifies our lives a little bit. Another example would be we were working on this cart, and we'd had this idea that this cart would take the device on a journey between one room, which was the preparation room inside the hospital, if you may, and then there was a therapy delivery room elsewhere in the hospital. And so we had done some research with a site, and they said, oh yeah, it's like right next to it. you could just kind of prep it in the prep room. We'll just roll it over, do the delivery, now we can come back and do all the disposal and reprocessing, get it ready again. And so we thought, okay, that's kind of neat. So we really want this cart to have some aspect of moving it around, needs to be mobile. And then we started talking to more sites, and then we fell upon a site. It was a big one. It's a big one in the US, and they're like, that's not really the thing at all. In fact, they said, our delivery room is in another building, like a walk outside other building. So unless this thing is turning into some sort of, Costco cart or all-wheel drive type cart, that which would be impractical, then you're kind of going in the wrong direction with this. And it sort of refocused us to a sub piece of that system where like that's actually the thing that we need to make the champion of this, as opposed to the whole holistic thing, because that's really just going to probably live in one place and spend its entire time wheeling like in an area that's the size of like 4 by 8 feet. So it's always really important to don't single source your information, read through it, hear it, be objective, but at the same time make sure that you action a lot of those different pieces to make that successful product.
I love that. Your first example is one person gave you an insight that probably would affect, would benefit lots of different users. In the second instance, had you only listened to one source, you would have left out a whole other use case. So that's really interesting. I guess just to build on that, it makes me think of an app that we were working on. We had sort of two concepts for the app. One really had features that was focused on a new user of a therapy, and was built to help them understand and sort of come up to speed with a new therapy that they'd be living with. The other idea was really focused on this idea that perhaps patients might be interested in seeing lots of data, and in doing so could become more involved with their own therapy, and perhaps even track progress and really get into the data. And the answer that we got was no and yes. Half of the respondents said no to one and yes to the other, and it was flip-flop. We got contradictory information and weren't sure how to process that. There wasn't a clear path forward. What we ended up doing is creating an app which in concept would actually evolve with different people. The real no was coming from the fact that some people were more focused on what the first 6 months of the treatment were going to be like. Other people were looking forward to, well, in 6 months, once I've got this sort of as part of my life, I'm going to turn into more of a data nerd. And so it was sort of a middle ground, and we just had to say, well, this product actually will need to morph and change, just like people morph and change. So I love your examples. Thanks.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Makes a lot of sense to me.